"Madam, stay back," the poor black boy said as he shielded the old elderly woman from the deadly and poisonous black mamba, grabbing a stick. The poor black boy smacked the deadly snake to death and saved the old elderly woman. Little did he know that this one act of selfless kindness would change not only his life, but that of his family too. Stick with us on this one. Tell us exactly where you are watching from. New York, Israel, Houston, Singapore, or anywhere at all. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel, subscribe now. We post quality stories every day just for you, and our stories are completely packed with lessons. The sound came first. A low rumble that didn't belong in this neighborhood. Then the engines, purring like predators circling prey. 10 black limousines rolled down Jefferson Street in perfect formation, their tinted windows reflecting the cracked pavement and faded houses that lined the block. Neighbors poured onto their porches. Phones emerged from pockets. Children stopped playing to stare. The vehicles moved slowly, deliberately, as if searching for something precious hidden among the poverty. They came to a stop in front of the smallest, most weathered house on the street, the house where Darius King lived with his grandmother. Men in dark suits stepped out. Security personnel with earpieces scanned the crowd. A woman in an expensive blazer approached the front door with a leather folder under her arm. Mrs. Henderson from next door whispered to her husband, "Who died?" But nobody had died. At least not yet. And these people hadn't come for a funeral. They'd come for a boy nobody had ever noticed before. A boy who 24 hours earlier had done something that would change his life forever. But to understand why 10 limousines were blocking Jefferson Street that morning, we need to go back to the day before. To an abandoned lot. To a scream. And to a choice that most people wouldn't have made. Darius King was 15 years old and invisible. Not literally, of course, but in every way that mattered. At school, teachers looked through him when calling on students. In the cafeteria, he ate alone by the window, watching other kids laugh in groups he'd never be invited to join. Walking home, adults passed him on the sidewalk without a glance, their eyes sliding over him like he was part of the cracked concrete. He'd learned to accept it. Invisibility had its advantages. Nobody expected anything from you. Nobody asked questions about why your shoes had holes in the soles or why you wore the same 3 shirts in rotation. Nobody noticed when you skipped lunch to save the meal money for your grandmother's medication. The walk home from school took 40 minutes if you followed the main roads. Darius had discovered a shortcut through an abandoned industrial lot that cut the journey to 25. The lot had once been a textile factory, back when this neighborhood had jobs and hope. Now it was just weeds, broken glass, and the skeletal remains of a greenhouse where someone had tried to start an urban garden before running out of money or faith or both. It was Thursday, October 26th, and the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the lot as Darius picked his way through the usual path. His backpack, heavy with library books he'd checked out because they were free entertainment, dug into his shoulders. He was thinking about the calculus homework he'd need to finish before his grandmother needed help with dinner. That's when he heard the scream. High-pitched. Terrified. Coming from near the old greenhouse. Darius's first instinct was to keep walking. In this neighborhood, you minded your business. Screams could mean domestic disputes, drug deals gone wrong, things a 15-year-old kid had no business getting involved in. But then the scream came again, and this time there were words. Please. Someone. Help. An older woman's voice. Genuine terror, not anger. Darius dropped his backpack and ran toward the greenhouse. The structure was mostly collapsed, its glass panels long since shattered, leaving only the rusted metal frame and some stubborn panes that caught the afternoon light. Wild vines had reclaimed it, turning it into something that looked almost beautiful from a distance, but was treacherous up close. He found her near the east wall of the greenhouse, frozen in place like a statue. She was elderly, maybe 70, maybe older, with silver hair pulled back in an elegant bun. She wore a simple but well-made dress, the kind that looked expensive even though it wasn't flashy. Her hands were raised slightly, palms out, as if trying to calm something dangerous. Then Darius saw why she couldn't move. Coiled on the ground less than 3 feet from her left foot was a black mamba. Darius had seen documentaries. He knew what he was looking at.
The snake was nearly 7 feet long, its scales gleaming an olive gray that looked black in the shadows. Its head was raised, slightly flared, watching the woman with the cold calculation of a predator deciding whether to strike. Black mambas weren't native to this area. Someone must have been keeping it illegally and it had escaped or been released. But that didn't matter now. What mattered was that the woman was in immediate danger and the snake was alert, agitated. 2 other people stood at a distance. A jogger and a man who'd been walking his dog. Both were filming with their phones, but neither moved to help. "Don't move," Darius said quietly, announcing his presence without startling the snake. The woman's eyes shifted toward him. They were striking eyes, sharp and intelligent, even in fear. "I've been standing here for 5 minutes," she said, her voice remarkably steady despite the trembling in her hands. "I can't hold still much longer." The jogger called out, "Kid, get back. That thing's deadly." Darius ignored him. His mind was racing, calculating. Black mambas could strike from distance. They were fast, the fastest snakes in the world. Their venom could kill in hours without treatment. But they were also nervous, defensive. They attacked when threatened, when they felt cornered. The snake's attention was fixed on the woman. It saw her as the primary threat. Darius scanned the ground. Broken glass, pieces of rusted metal. And there, half buried in weeds, the handle of an old garden rake, its metal tines bent and broken, but the handle still solid. He moved slowly, so slowly it hurt. Each step deliberate, each movement smooth. Predators responded to sudden motion, to the jerky movements of prey animals. "What are you doing?" the woman whispered. "Getting its attention," Darius said. The jogger yelled again, "You're crazy, kid. Someone call animal control." But animal control would take 30 minutes minimum. The woman didn't have 30 minutes. Her leg was already trembling from the strain of holding still. Darius reached the rake handle, gripped it, lifted it slowly from the weeds. The snake's tongue flicked out, tasting the air. Its head moved slightly, tracking the new movement. "When I move," Darius said quietly to the woman, "you step back. Slow and steady. Don't run. You'll be killed," she said. "Better than both of us getting bit." What Darius didn't say was that he was terrified. His heart was hammering so hard he could hear it in his ears. His hands were slick with sweat on the rake handle. But he'd learned something from being invisible his whole life. You didn't matter until you did something that mattered. He took a step to the right, extending the rake slowly. The snake's head followed the movement. Another step. The rake moved closer to the snake, giving it a new target. The mamba's body tensed. Its mouth opened slightly, revealing the black interior that gave the species its name. "Now," Darius said. "Back away. Slow." The woman took one careful step backward, then another. The snake's attention snapped toward the movement. Darius tapped the rake against the ground, drawing focus back to himself. His whole body was screaming at him to run, but he held his ground. The woman took another step, then another. She was almost clear. The snake suddenly uncoiled, its body extending as it prepared to strike. But at Darius, not the woman. "Run!" Darius shouted. The woman bolted. The mamba launched itself forward with terrifying speed. Darius swung the rake down, not trying to hit the snake, but to create a barrier. The metal tines caught the snake's midsection, deflecting its strike. The snake's momentum carried it past Darius, and he stumbled backward, nearly falling. The mamba landed in the weeds, coiled again, angry now. Darius backed away, keeping the rake between himself and the snake. His foot caught on a piece of broken concrete, and he went down hard, landing on his back. The rake flew from his hands. The snake rose up, ready for another strike. Darius couldn't breathe, couldn't move. This was it. But the woman was suddenly there, grabbing his arm, pulling him back with surprising strength for her age. The man with the dog had finally found his courage and was shouting, waving a jacket to distract the snake. The mamba, overwhelmed by multiple threats, made its decision. It turned and slithered away through the weeds, disappearing into the overgrown lot with the fluid grace of something that had never been there at all. For a moment, nobody moved. The only sound was Darius's ragged breathing. Then the woman helped him to his feet. "You saved my life," she said. Darius's legs felt like water. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving him shaky and sick. "Are you okay?" he managed to ask. She studied him with those sharp eyes, really looking at him, seeing him in a way people rarely did. "I'm unharmed thanks to you. But you, that was extraordinarily brave and extraordinarily foolish. Couldn't just leave you there," Darius said. The jogger approached, phone still recording. "Dude, that was insane. This is definitely going viral. What's your name?" "I need to go," Darius said, suddenly uncomfortable with the attention. But the woman's hand was still on his arm, gentle but firm. "Please, wait just a moment." She reached into a small bag she'd been carrying and pulled out a wallet. "Let me give you a reward. You risked your life." "No," Darius said quickly. "I don't want money. Everyone wants money, young man. I don't want your money. For this. You don't owe me anything." She tilted her head, studying him with renewed interest. "What's your name?" "Darius. Darius King." "Well, Darius King. I'm Dorothy Hale." She extended her hand and he shook it. Her grip was firm, her skin papery but warm. "And regardless of what you want, I am in your debt." "You're not," Darius insisted. He retrieved his backpack from where he dropped it and slung it over his shoulder. "Just be careful around here. This lot isn't safe." "Clearly," Dorothy Hale said dryly. But she was still watching him, her eyes moving over his worn shoes, his frayed backpack, the careful way he held himself. "You're in school?" "Yes, ma'am. Jefferson High. And you walk this way every day?" "It's shorter." "I see." She seemed to be deciding something. "Darius King, I meant what I said about being in your debt. I would like to repay you somehow. Really, it's okay." "I'm not used to being told no," she said, but she was smiling. "How about this? I won't force money on you today, but allow me to think of an appropriate way to thank you for your extraordinary courage. Would you accept that?" Darius hesitated. Something about this woman made him feel like saying yes was important, though he couldn't explain why. "Okay. Do you have a phone number where I can reach you?" He recited his grandmother's home number. They couldn't afford cell phones. Dorothy pulled out her own phone, expensive and new, and typed the number in. "I'll be in touch, Darius King. And thank you again. What you did today, most people wouldn't have done it. Most people are smarter than me," Darius said. She laughed at that, a genuine sound. "Perhaps. Or perhaps most people have forgotten what courage looks like." She glanced at the man with the dog and the jogger, who were both keeping their distance. "I should go. The authorities will want to search for that snake." Darius nodded and turned to leave. "Darius," she called after him. "Tomorrow, your life is going to change." He looked back at her confused. "What?" But she was already walking away, her posture straight, despite what she'd just been through, her silver hair catching the late afternoon sun. The jogger came up to Darius. "Hey man, seriously, I got the whole thing on video. You're going to be famous. Want me to tag you when I post it?" "No thanks," Darius said, and walked away before the questions could continue. He didn't believe in fairy tales or rewards for doing the right thing. He'd done what anyone should have done, and that was the end of it. Dorothy Hale seemed nice, but she was probably just being polite. By tomorrow, she'd forget all about the poor kid who'd helped her, and life would go back to normal. Darius had no idea how wrong he was. His grandmother was dozing in her armchair when he got home, the television playing a game show at low volume. Darius quietly set his backpack down and started on dinner. Chicken and rice, stretched to last 3 meals. Later, when she woke, he told her about the snake. His grandmother, Evelyn King, was 68, but looked older, worn down by years of hard work and harder luck. She'd raised Darius since he was 4, after his mother had died and his father had disappeared. She'd done it on a nursing assistant's pension and Social Security, pinching every penny until it screamed. You did what? She said, her eyes wide. Darius repeated the story, downplaying the danger. Lord have mercy, she whispered. Darius, you could have been killed. But I wasn't. And the lady is okay. What lady? Dorothy Hale. That was her name. His grandmother's eyes narrowed. Dorothy Hale. Yes, ma'am. You know her? I sure know. But that name, it sounds familiar. She shook her head. Probably just reminds me of someone. But baby, you can't be risking your life like that. What would I do without you? You'd be fine, Grandma. Don't say that. Her voice was sharp. Don't ever say that. They ate dinner in uncomfortable silence, watching Wheel of Fortune. Darius did his homework at the kitchen table while his grandmother took her evening medications. 4 pills for blood pressure, 2 for diabetes, 1 for her heart. Before bed, his grandmother took his hand. I'm proud of you, she said. What you did today was brave. But promise me you'll be more careful. I promise, Grandma. Good. Because miracles don't happen to people like us, baby. We have to make our own luck. Darius went to sleep thinking about those words. His grandmother was right. Miracles were for other people, for the families in the nice neighborhoods, for the kids whose parents drove new cars and paid for college applications. People like him, they just survived. But while Darius slept, something was happening across the city that would prove his grandmother wrong. Dorothy Hale had gone directly to Mercy General Hospital. Despite her calm demeanor, she was having trouble breathing, her heart racing. The encounter with the snake had triggered an acute stress response, and at her age, that was dangerous. A private ambulance had picked her up from the industrial lot. The paramedics knew who she was. Everyone at Mercy General knew Dorothy Hale. She'd funded the new pediatric wing. Her name was on a plaque in the main lobby. In the emergency room, doctors swarmed around her. Blood pressure monitors, EKG, IV fluids. She waved them away impatiently. I'm fine. Just shaken. Mrs. Hale, your heart rate is elevated. Of course it is. I nearly died today. She fixed the head doctor with a sharp look. Where's Grant Whitmore? We're calling him now. Tell him to bring Jennifer Chen and Marcus Beaumont. I need all 3 of them here within the hour. The doctor hesitated. Mrs. Hale, you need rest. What I need, Dorothy said firmly, is my legal team. Now, within 45 minutes, 3 people arrived at her private hospital room. Grant Whitmore, corporate attorney, 60 years old and sharp as a blade. Jennifer Chen, head of her charitable foundation, 30-ish and fiercely intelligent. Marcus Beaumont, her personal financial advisor, who'd been managing her fortune for 20 years. Dorothy was sitting up in bed, looking annoyed at being in a hospital gown. Took you long enough. We came as fast as we could, Grant said. Dorothy, what happened? They said something about a snake attack, a black mamba, in that abandoned lot near Jefferson High. Jennifer gasped. My God, how did you survive? A boy saved me. 15 years old. Risked his life without hesitation. Dorothy's eyes were bright with emotion. Do you know what everyone else did? They filmed it. They stood there with their phones out and filmed me standing there facing death. That's awful, Jennifer said. It's predictable, Dorothy said bitterly. But that boy, Darius King, he didn't even think about himself. He saw someone in danger and he acted. When I tried to give him money afterward, he refused. Marcus frowned. He refused, said I didn't owe him anything, that he'd only done what anyone should have done. Dorothy leaned forward. In my 74 years, I have met thousands of people. Business leaders, politicians, philanthropists. And do you know what I've learned? Most people are decent when it costs them nothing. But show me someone who acts with courage when it actually matters, when there's genuine risk and no guaranteed reward. She paused. Those people are extraordinary, and they're rare. What are you thinking? Grant asked carefully. He'd known Dorothy for 30 years. He recognized that tone. I'm thinking about legacy, Dorothy said. I'm thinking about what I'm going to leave behind when I die. You're not dying, Jennifer protested. We're all dying, dear. Some of us just have a clearer timeline. Dorothy waved away their concern. I had tests last month. Stage 3 kidney disease. I've maybe 5 good years left, possibly less. The room went silent. You didn't tell us, Marcus finally said. I'm telling you now. Dorothy's voice was matter of fact. And I'm telling you because it's time to make final decisions about what happens to Hale Industries when I'm gone. Hale Industries, a pharmaceutical empire built over 5 decades, worth $4.7 billion. Holdings in drug manufacturing, medical research, hospital equipment. Dorothy had started with nothing. A chemistry degree and a loan she'd taken out by mortgaging her mother's house. Now her company employed 14,000 people across 3 continents, and she had no heir. Her husband had died 20 years ago. They'd never had children. Dorothy had been too focused on building the company. Her siblings were dead or estranged. Her nephews and nieces had spent years circling like vultures, waiting for her to die so they could fight over the inheritance. I've been thinking about this for months, Dorothy continued, trying to figure out who deserves to carry this forward. My nephew Richard wants to sell the company to the highest bidder. My niece Veronica wants to gut the research division and maximize profits. None of them understand what I built or why I built it. So what are you proposing? Grant asked. Dorothy smiled. It wasn't a gentle smile. I'm proposing that we find someone who understands what real courage looks like. Someone who hasn't been corrupted by easy money or privilege. Someone who, when faced with a choice between safety and doing what's right, chose right without hesitation. Jennifer's eyes widened. You're talking about the boy, Darius King. 15 years old. Lives in the poorest neighborhood in the city with his sick grandmother. Walks through an abandoned lot to save bus money. Dorothy's voice was passionate now. That boy has more character in his little finger than most of the so-called leaders I've met. And I want to give him a chance. Dorothy, Marcus said carefully, I understand you're grateful, but this seems extreme, impulsive. Dorothy laughed. Maybe, but I've spent my entire life being careful and calculating. I've made every decision based on market research and projected outcomes. And you know what? I'm dying alone in a hospital bed with no one to pass my legacy to except people who'll destroy it the moment I'm gone. She looked at each of them in turn. Today, a boy I'd never met risked his life for me. He didn't know who I was. He didn't know there'd be a reward. He just saw someone in danger and acted. That's the kind of person who should have power. Not because they seek it, but because they'd use it for something other than themselves. Grant was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, What exactly are you proposing? I want to create a trust. Full scholarship for Darius. Education through graduate school if he wants it. Living expenses for him and his grandmother. Medical care. And, she paused for effect. I want to name him as a potential successor. Dorothy. Not immediately. Not fully. But I want him trained. Mentored. Given an opportunity to prove himself over the next few years. If he's truly as remarkable as I believe, then he earns a significant role in the foundation and the company. If he's not, then the trust still changes his life, and I've lost nothing but some money I wasn't taking with me anyway. Jennifer was nodding slowly. It's actually brilliant. A scholarship program. We frame it as part of your charitable work, which it is. It deflects the family drama and gives you time to evaluate whether he's really capable. Exactly, Dorothy said. But there's one more thing. I want him tested. I want to see how he handles sudden pressure, public attention, and opposition. If he crumbles, better to know now. So we go public with this? Marcus asked. Tomorrow morning. 10 vehicles. Full security detail. Media coverage if possible. We make it very clear that something significant is happening. Then we see how Darius King handles the spotlight. Grant was already making notes on his tablet. I'll have the legal documents drawn up tonight. But Dorothy, you realize your family is going to fight this? Let them. Dorothy's smile was fierce. I've been fighting my whole life. One more battle won't kill me. The kidney disease will handle that eventually. Don't joke about that, Jennifer said softly. Why not? Death is coming whether I joke about it or not. But before it arrives, I'm going to do something that matters. I'm going to give a deserving kid a chance at a life he never could have imagined. And I'm going to do it in a way that's impossible to ignore. She lay back against her pillows, suddenly exhausted. Now get to work. I want everything ready by morning. And I want someone to call Darius King's grandmother tonight to prepare her. This is going to be overwhelming. The three advisors exchanged glances. They'd all seen Dorothy Hale make bold moves before. Hostile takeovers, risky investments, controversial research projects. But this was different. This was personal. One question, Grant said. What if the boy says no? Dorothy's eyes sharpened. Then he's smarter than I thought. But I don't think he will. Not when he understands what's truly being offered. That boy has been invisible his whole life. Tomorrow, I'm going to make him impossible to ignore. And then we'll see what he's truly made of. At midnight, Evelyn King's phone rang. She almost didn't answer. Calls this late were usually bill collectors or wrong numbers. But something made her pick up. Hello, Mrs. King. My name is Jennifer Chen. I'm calling on behalf of Dorothy Hale. I believe your grandson Darius met Mrs. Hale today. Evelyn's heart began to race. Yes? Is something wrong? Nothing's wrong. In fact, something very right is about to happen. Mrs. King, would you and Darius be available tomorrow morning at 8? We have some news that's going to change your lives. Subscribe to see what happens when those 10 limousines arrive at Darius's door tomorrow morning. When Darius woke on Friday morning, his grandmother was already in the kitchen, dressed in her church clothes even though it wasn't Sunday. Her hands were shaking as she poured coffee. Grandma, you okay? She turned to him, and her eyes were wet with tears. Baby, something's happening. Something I don't understand, but I got a call last night. From that woman you helped. From Dorothy Hale. Darius felt his stomach drop. What did she say? She didn't call herself. Her assistant did. Said people were coming this morning. Said we should be ready. Evelyn's voice trembled. Darius. I looked her up. Dorothy Hale. Do you know who she is? No. She's one of the richest women in America. She owns Hale Industries, the pharmaceutical company. She's worth billions. The room tilted slightly. Darius sat down hard in one of the kitchen chairs. That can't be right. I thought the same thing. So I stayed up half the night researching. It's her, baby. The woman you saved yesterday is Dorothy Hale, and she's sending people here this morning. They looked at each other, both frightened and confused and hopeful in equal measure. At exactly 8 o'clock, the rumble began. The limousines came down Jefferson Street like a presidential motorcade, black and sleek and completely alien to the neighborhood. Neighbors poured out of houses. Children stopped mid-stride on their bikes. Mrs. Henderson clutched her chest and said, Lord Jesus. The vehicles stopped in front of the King house. Doors opened. Men and women in expensive suits emerged. Security personnel with earpieces took up positions. And then a woman in a tailored blazer approached the front door. Jennifer Chen knocked politely, even though she could have just opened the door. It wasn't locked. Few doors were locked in this neighborhood during the day. Darius answered, his heart hammering. Darius King. Jennifer smiled warmly. I'm Jennifer Chen. We spoke to your grandmother last night. May we come in? What followed was the most surreal hour of Darius's life. They sat in the living room. Jennifer Chen, Grant Whitmore, Marcus Beaumont, and 2 other lawyers whose names Darius immediately forgot. His grandmother held his hand tightly while they explained. Dorothy Hale wanted to thank him. Not with money. Well, not just with money. With opportunity. Full scholarship to any university he wanted. Trust, fund for living expenses. Medical care for his grandmother. Legal representation. Financial advisory services. But there was more. Mrs. Hale was very impressed with you, Jennifer said. Not just with what you did, but with who you are. Your character, your courage, and she would like to offer you something unprecedented. She wants to mentor you personally, train you in business, in leadership. And if you prove capable over the next several years, potentially give you a significant role in her foundation and company. Darius couldn't speak. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. I don't understand, his grandmother said. Why? Why would she do this? Grant Whitmore leaned forward. Mrs. Hale has no direct heirs. Her family. He paused diplomatically. Let's just say they're not aligned with her vision for the company. When your grandson saved her life yesterday, she saw something she's been searching for. Genuine character, uncorrupted by privilege or expectation. She wants to give him a chance. But he's just 15, Evelyn protested. Which is why this is a mentorship, not an immediate succession. He'll finish high school, go to college, learn the business. If at any point he decides this isn't for him, the scholarship and trust remain. This isn't about obligation. It's about potential. Darius found his voice. What do I have to do? Accept the offer. Meet with Mrs. Hale regularly. Work hard in school. Maintain the integrity you showed yesterday. Jennifer smiled. She's not asking you to change who you are, Darius. She's asking you to become the best version of yourself. And if I fail, then you fail with a degree and financial security, Marcus said practically. There's no real downside here. But Grant held up a hand. Actually, there is one thing you should know. This won't be private. Mrs. Hale intends to announce this publicly. There will be media attention. Scrutiny. Her family will not be happy about this decision, and they may make things difficult. How difficult? Evelyn asked sharply. They may try to discredit Darius, dig up anything they can use against him, create a narrative that he's undeserving or that this is a mistake. Grant's voice was firm. I want to be honest about that. This opportunity comes with a cost. The cost is your privacy and your anonymity. Darius thought about being invisible, about walking through school without anyone seeing him, about being one more poor kid in a poor neighborhood, forgotten and irrelevant. And he thought about his grandmother, who'd sacrificed everything to raise him, about the medications she needed but sometimes skipped to save money, about the opportunities she'd never had. I'll do it, he said. Baby. His grandmother started. Grandma, you've been taking care of me my whole life. Let me take care of you for once. Tears spilled down Evelyn's cheeks. You don't have to do this for me. I'm not just doing it for you. I'm doing it for me too. Because yesterday, for the first time in my life, someone saw me. Really saw me. And if Mrs. Hale thinks I'm worth investing in. He swallowed hard. Maybe I am. Grant pulled out a stack of documents. Then we have paperwork to handle. And Darius, there's someone who wants to meet with you today. Are you ready? An hour later, Darius sat in the back of a limousine for the first time in his life, heading toward the medical district. His grandmother sat beside him, still crying quietly, still holding his hand. They were taken to a private floor of Mercy General, to a suite that looked more like a hotel room than a hospital. And there, sitting in a chair by the window with an IV in her arm, but her posture straight and her eyes sharp, was Dorothy Hale. Darius King, she said warmly. Thank you for coming. Thank you for everything. I still don't really understand. Let me explain then. She gestured to chairs. Please, sit. You too, Mrs. King. I'm so glad to finally meet you. Your grandson saved my life yesterday, and I am not a woman who forgets her debts. For the next 2 hours, Dorothy talked. She told them about her life. Growing up poor in rural Kentucky, working her way through college, building Hale Industries from nothing. She talked about her fears for what would happen to her legacy when she died. And she talked about what she'd seen in Darius when he'd faced that snake. Do you know what most people do when confronted with real danger? She asked. They freeze. Or they run. Or they watch while someone else suffers. Those are the natural responses. What you did was unnatural in the best possible way. You saw danger and you ran toward it. You saw someone suffering and you acted. And when I tried to reward you, you refused, because you'd done it for the right reasons. I was terrified, Darius admitted. Of course you were. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's action in spite of fear. And that's what I need in someone who'll carry my work forward. Not someone who's never been afraid. Someone who's afraid and does the right thing anyway. She leaned forward. I can't promise this will be easy. My family will fight this. They'll say terrible things about you. The media will scrutinize everything you've ever done. And there will be times when you doubt yourself, when you wonder if you're good enough. So why do it? Darius asked. Dorothy smiled. Because the alternative is giving up before you've even tried. Because you have potential you can't even imagine yet. And because sometimes, Darius, the only way to discover who you truly are is to step into a role that terrifies you and see if you can grow into it. She extended her hand. So what do you say? Will you let an old woman invest in your future? Darius took her hand. Yes, ma'am. I will. Good. Then, let's get to work. The announcement went public that afternoon. Hale Industries issued a press release. Dorothy Hale creates Scholarship Foundation, names first recipient. The story included a brief description of the snake encounter and a photo of Darius standing awkwardly in a suit that had been hastily purchased for the occasion. By evening, it was trending on social media. The video the jogger had taken went viral. Millions of views, thousands of comments. Most were positive, celebrating Darius's courage. But some were skeptical, questioning Dorothy's motives, or suggesting Darius was being exploited. And then Dorothy's family found out. Richard Hale, Dorothy's nephew, called an emergency family meeting. 7 relatives showed up at his mansion in the wealthy part of town, all of them furious. She's lost her mind, Richard said, pacing. Giving our inheritance to some random kid, it's a publicity stunt, his sister Veronica said. She'll get bored in a few months. And if she doesn't, their cousin Marcus Jr. demanded. What if she actually goes through with this? We'll lose everything. We have to contest it, someone else said. She's clearly not of sound mind. Richard shook his head. That won't work. I already talked to our lawyers. She had a full psychiatric evaluation done last month. She knew we'd try this. She's legally competent. Then we go after the kid, Veronica said coldly. Find something on him. Everyone has secrets. He's 15, Marcus Jr. protested. What kind of secrets could he have? I don't care if he's a saint. We'll find something or create something. Public perception matters. If we can turn people against him, maybe Dorothy will change her mind. They hired private investigators that night. Started digging into Darius's past, his family, his school records. They were looking for anything. Bad grades, disciplinary problems, anything that could be used to paint him as unworthy. But Darius King had lived his entire life being invisible and careful. He had perfect attendance, straight A's, not a single disciplinary mark. Teachers described him as quiet, respectful, hardworking. So they changed tactics. They leaked stories to the media suggesting the whole thing was a setup, that Darius had planned the snake encounter to manipulate Dorothy. They implied his grandmother had put him up to it. They questioned whether someone from his background could possibly handle the responsibility of working with a major corporation. The attacks came within a week. Hit pieces in tabloids. Anonymous social media accounts spreading rumors. Cruel memes. Someone even showed up at Jefferson High trying to interview students about Darius, fishing for anything negative. Darius sat in Dorothy's office. He'd been given a small workspace in Hale Industries headquarters, and read the latest article on his phone. They're saying I'm a con artist, he said quietly. Dorothy looked up from her paperwork. Yes, they're saying you're being manipulated. They're saying a lot of things. Does it bother you? She considered the question. It bothers me that people are so eager to tear down something good. It bothers me that their first instinct is cynicism rather than hope. But am I surprised? No. People who've never done anything brave themselves always question the bravery of others. How do I handle it? You ignore it and keep working. You let your actions speak louder than their words. She set down her pen and looked at him directly. Darius, you need to understand something. They're not actually attacking you. They're attacking the idea of you. The idea that someone from your background could possibly deserve what they feel entitled to. They're attacking everything you represent. Merit over privilege, courage over comfort, potential over pedigree. So what do? You prove them wrong. Not by arguing or defending yourself, but by becoming undeniable. By working so hard and doing so well that even your enemies have to acknowledge your worth. She smiled. It's what I did. When I started this company, people said I was too young, too female, too poor, too uneducated. I let them talk, and then I built something they couldn't ignore. Over the next 6 months, Darius learned what she meant. He finished his sophomore year of high school with a 4.0 GPA. He spent his afternoons at Hale Industries, learning about pharmaceutical development, business operations, supply chain management. He attended board meetings and asked questions that surprised the executives with their insight. Dorothy assigned him a reading list, books on business, ethics, leadership, history. They had dinner together twice a week, discussing what he'd learned, debating ideas, challenging each other. His grandmother's health improved dramatically with access to better medications and regular doctor's visits. They moved to a better apartment. Nothing extravagant, but safe and comfortable, with heat that worked and windows that locked. And slowly, the narrative began to change. A profile in a business magazine. The student Dorothy Hale is betting her legacy on. An interview where Darius discussed his goals. Improving healthcare access in underserved communities, funding research for diseases that disproportionately affected the poor, creating pathways for other kids from backgrounds like his. People started to see him not as a con artist or a charity case, but as someone genuinely remarkable. But Dorothy's family wasn't done yet. 8 months after the initial announcement, Dorothy's health took a turn. Her kidney disease progressed faster than expected. She was hospitalized again, this time more seriously. Richard Hale saw his opportunity. He filed legal papers claiming Dorothy was under undue influence, that Darius and his team had manipulated her while she was vulnerable. He demanded a full competency hearing and a freeze on any transfers of assets or authority. The case made national news. Court TV covered it. Social media exploded with opinions. Darius found himself at the center of a legal battle he barely understood. "We can fight this," Grant Whitmore said during an emergency meeting. "Dorothy's medical records are clear. She's competent, but it's going to be ugly." Darius sat in a conference room 40 floors above the city, looking at lawyers and advisors, and he felt 16 years old again. Maybe I should just walk away. Let them have it. I don't want to be the reason Mrs. Hale's last days are spent in court. "That's not your decision to make," a voice said from the doorway. Dorothy Hale stood there, thinner than before, using a cane, but with her spine straight and fire in her eyes. She shouldn't have been out of the hospital, but she'd checked herself out against medical advice. "Dorothy, you need to rest." Jennifer started. "I'll rest when I'm dead. Right now, I have a battle to fight." She looked at Darius. "And you do too. You want to walk away? Fine. But understand what that means. It means they win. It means people like my nephew Richard. People who've never worked a real day in their lives, who've never risked anything or helped anyone, get to inherit everything I built. Is that what you want? No, but. No buts. Darius, do you know why I chose you? It wasn't just because you saved my life. It was because you saw someone in danger and you didn't calculate the cost. You didn't think about whether it was fair or safe or whether you'd be rewarded. You just acted. That's leadership. That's integrity. And that's exactly what this moment requires." She sat down heavily, and Darius could see how much the effort cost her. "My family thinks they can bully you into giving up. They think you're weak because you're young and poor and black, and they've spent generations believing people like them are better than people like you. Prove them wrong." The hearing took place 3 weeks later. Darius sat next to Dorothy's legal team, wearing another suit that still felt foreign, and listened to Richard Hale's lawyers paint him as a manipulator, An opportunist, someone who'd taken advantage of an elderly woman in her moment of vulnerability. They brought up his background, the poverty, his father's abandonment, trying to imply he had a pattern of seeking handouts. They questioned his grades, suggesting he'd cheated. They even brought up the snake incident, claiming he might have planted the snake himself. It was vicious, systematic, designed to destroy him. But then Dorothy took the stand. She was weak. Her voice wavered. But when she spoke about Darius, about what she'd seen in him, and why she'd made her decision, the courtroom went silent. "My nephew claims I'm being manipulated," she said. "Let me be clear. The only people who have ever tried to manipulate me are sitting right there." She pointed at Richard and his siblings. "They've been circling like vultures for years, waiting for me to die so they can sell everything I built and divide the money. They don't care about the company. They don't care about the people who work for us or the patients who depend on our medications. They care about money." She turned to look at Darius. "That boy saved my life, and then he refused payment. He went home and took care of his sick grandmother and did his homework and expected nothing. When I offered him an opportunity, do you know what he said? He said he was afraid he'd fail. Not that he was entitled to it. Not that he deserved it. He was afraid he wasn't good enough." Her voice grew stronger. "That humility, that self-awareness, that courage. That's what I need in a successor. Not someone who assumes they deserve power because of their last name. Someone who understands the weight of responsibility and is willing to work for it anyway." The judge ruled in Dorothy's favor. The competency challenge was dismissed. Dorothy Hale was declared of sound mind, and her legal arrangements were upheld. Richard Hale stormed out of the courtroom, but not before leaning close to Darius and whispering, "This isn't over." But it was over. At least, that phase of it was. Dorothy's health continued to decline. By Darius's 17th birthday, she was in hospice care. He visited her every day after school, doing his homework in her room while she dozed, talking to her about what he'd learned, about his plans for the future. One afternoon, she woke from a nap and found him reading a book on healthcare policy. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "I'm thinking about antivenom," he said, "for snake bites. It's expensive and hard to access in rural areas. Hundreds of people die every year from treatable snake bites because they can't afford treatment or can't get to a hospital in time. And I want to fix that. When I have the authority, I want Hale Industries to develop a cheaper antivenom. Maybe a grant program for rural hospitals. Something that actually helps people." Dorothy smiled, tears in her eyes. "You see? That's why I chose you. You remember where you came from. You remember what it's like to need help and not have access to it." She reached for his hand. "Promise me something. Anything. Promise me you won't let them make you forget. As you get more successful, more powerful, more comfortable, there will be people who try to convince you that you've earned the right to stop caring. That you've paid your dues and you can focus on yourself now. Don't listen to them. I won't. Stay angry, Darius. Stay angry at injustice. Stay angry at systems that let people suffer when we have the resources to help them. That anger is fuel. Use it. I promise." She died 3 days later, quietly, in her sleep. Darius was holding her hand. The funeral was massive. Thousands of people, dignitaries from around the world, coverage on every major news network. Darius gave a eulogy that made grown executives cry. And then the will was read. Dorothy had left substantial amounts to her family, enough that they'd be comfortable, but not enough to destroy them with unearned wealth. She'd left large donations to various charities and research institutions. But the controlling interest in Hale Industries and the authority to make decisions about the company's future she'd left in a trust. A trust that would be managed by her team of advisors until Darius King turned 25, at which point he would assume control if he'd met certain benchmarks, completing his education, demonstrating sound judgment, maintaining the ethical standards she'd valued. Richard Hale contested it immediately. The legal battle lasted 2 years, but Dorothy's lawyers were better and her documentation was impeccable. Eventually, the courts upheld her will. Darius was 18 when he started college. He chose a state university instead of an Ivy League school. He wanted to stay close to his grandmother, and he didn't feel the need to prove anything with a prestigious name. He studied public health and business administration. He worked part-time at Hale Industries, learning every aspect of the company from the ground up. He spent summers in the manufacturing facilities, in the research labs, in the hospitals where Hale medications saved lives. And he never forgot where he came from. By the time he was 25, he'd earned his MBA and completed medical school training in public health. The board of directors, initially skeptical, had watched him grow into a leader who combined Dorothy's vision with his own unique perspective. On his 25th birthday, Darius King officially became CEO of Hale Industries. His first major initiative, the Dorothy Hale Access Program, a comprehensive effort to provide affordable medications and antivenom to underserved communities worldwide. The program was controversial among shareholders who cared only about profits, but Darius stood firm. Dorothy didn't build this company to make rich people richer, he said at his first annual meeting as CEO. She built it to help people, and that's what we're going to keep doing. The program was a success. Within 3 years, snakebite mortality in targeted regions dropped by 40%. Access to essential medications improved. And surprisingly, Hale Industries' stock price went up. Consumers rewarded companies that demonstrated genuine social responsibility. Darius expanded the company's research focus to include neglected tropical diseases, conditions that affected millions of poor people but were ignored by major pharmaceutical companies because they weren't profitable. He established scholarship programs for students from underserved backgrounds who wanted to study medicine or public health. He called them the Second Chance Scholarships, and he personally interviewed every recipient. And every year, on the anniversary of Dorothy Hale's death, he went back to that abandoned lot near Jefferson High. It had been cleaned up now, turned into a community garden funded by the Hale Foundation. But he still remembered what it had looked like that day. Overgrown and dangerous, a place where death could hide in the weeds. He remembered being 15 and terrified and invisible. And he remembered choosing to act anyway. 10 years after that day with the Black Mamba, Darius King stood in his office on the 45th floor of Hale Industries headquarters and looked out at the city. He was 25, CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, responsible for thousands of employees and millions of patients who depended on their products. His phone buzzed. A text from his grandmother, "Proud of you, baby. Come to dinner tonight." He smiled. Despite everything that had changed, some things remained constant. His grandmother still lived in that same comfortable apartment. She'd refused to move anywhere fancier, saying she liked her neighbors. They still had dinner together twice a week. She still called him baby. There was a knock on his door. Jennifer Chen, now COO, stuck her head in. "Ready for the board meeting? Give me 5 minutes," he said. When she left, he pulled out his phone and looked at an old photo he'd saved. Dorothy Hale, sitting in her hospital chair, smiling at something he'd said. He kept it as a reminder of what this was all about. That evening, he drove himself to his grandmother's apartment. He'd never hired a driver, preferring to maintain some normalcy. The neighborhood hadn't changed much. Kids still played in the street. Mrs. Henderson still sat on her porch, though she waved at him now, proudly telling anyone who'd listen about that King boy who made it. His grandmother made pot roast, and they ate while watching Wheel of Fortune, just like old times. "You doing okay, baby?" she asked. "You look tired. Big decisions coming up. The board wants to cut funding for one of our research programs. Says it's not profitable enough. What does your gut say?" "My gut says that's exactly the kind of thinking Dorothy hated. That some things matter more than profit margins." His grandmother smiled. "Then you know what to do." He did. He'd learned from the best. Later, driving home through the city, Darius thought about the path that had brought him here. One moment of courage. One choice to help someone in danger. One woman who'd seen potential where others saw only poverty. His phone rang. An unknown number. He normally didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Hello? Is this Darius King?" A young woman's voice, nervous. "Yes? My name is Maria Rodriguez. I just got accepted to the Second Chance Scholarship Program. I just wanted to call and say thank you. I'm going to be the first person in my family to go to college." Darius felt his throat tighten. "Congratulations, Maria. You earned it. Can I ask you something? In your interview, you talked about being invisible, about how people didn't see you. I feel that way too sometimes. Like I don't matter. But then I got this scholarship and..." Her voice caught. "How did you handle it? When people started seeing you?" Darius pulled over, giving this conversation the attention it deserved. "I remembered that being seen comes with responsibility. People were watching to see if I'd fail, if I'd prove their worst assumptions right. So I decided to prove them wrong. Not to show off or because I had something to prove, but because I knew there'd be kids like you coming after me. Kids who needed to see that it was possible. I won't let you down," she said. "You don't owe me anything, Maria. Just promise me you'll remember this feeling. Remember what it was like to need help. And someday, when you have the power to help someone else, do it. That's how we change things. One person deciding to help one other person over and over until it becomes a movement." They talked for 10 more minutes. When he finally hung up, Darius sat in his car and let himself feel the weight of it all. The responsibility, the pressure, the privilege of being in a position to make a difference. Then he started the engine and drove home. Because tomorrow there was work to do. There were always people who needed help, systems that needed changing, injustices that needed fighting. And Darius King, who'd once been invisible, was now impossible to ignore. He'd made a promise to a dying woman and to himself. He wouldn't forget where he came from. He wouldn't let success make him comfortable with other people's suffering. He'd stay angry at injustice and use that anger as fuel. And he'd keep his eyes open for the next kid who was invisible, overlooked, underestimated. Because sometimes that kid just needs someone to see them. Someone to take a chance on them. Someone to say, "You matter." Just like Dorothy Hale had done for him. If this story inspired you, please like, share, and subscribe. Drop a comment below telling us about a time someone took a chance on you or when you took a chance on someone else. Your story might inspire someone else today. And remember, you never know when a simple act of courage might change everything. Subscribe to this channel now. Thanks and see you in the next video.